Okay, the question says that a project manager is planning to create a new computer game. The following table shows the activities and the estimated number of weeks to complete each activity. So this table that we have here is going to be used to create a Pert chart. Okay, so we have to label a Pert chart based on this table that has been provided to us. If we take a look at this table, we can see that this is going to be the first activity, right? We have to interview the end user, right? And once this activity is done, we are going to do our requirement analysis, right? Once the requirement analysis has been done, we can see that the design phase has an overlap. In the design phase, we're trying to do two things. One, we are going to design the program structure, right? For example, break it down into modules, create the flowcharts. And the second part is the design interface. What is the program, what is the GUI going to look like? What kind of buttons are going to be there, right? What kind of menu options are going to be there? What is going to be the color scheme that we are going to use? So the second part is related to the design of the interface, and both of these are part of the design phase, and we can see instantly, we should be able to realize that this is where we can have an overlap, that these two activities can take place simultaneously. Okay, once we are done with the design phase, we are going to start our coding, right? We are going to start writing the program. Okay, once we are done with program development, then we can test our software, and in this case the testing includes what? It involves black box testing. Black box testing means you don't know what the code is all about. So for example, somebody has developed a game like Subway Surfer and he wants you to test the game. He can give you the game. As an end user, you'll just click on different buttons, start playing the game and see if everything is working properly. You don't know what code was written, you don't know how the programmer developed this, but as an end user, for example, as somebody who doesn't know how the code is working, I should say, you just check the different buttons, see that the high score is working properly, see that the scoring is being done properly, see that when you swipe upwards, that the player takes a jump. When you swipe downwards, the player is able to roll. So you're doing black box testing without knowing the functionality or the code, right? So after black box testing, comes technical documentation, and documentation can always be done in parallel with other activities, right? It could be done in parallel with testing, it could be done in parallel with black box testing, or documentation can be done in parallel with acceptance testing. And acceptance testing will take place, acceptance testing basically is when you've handed over the software after development and testing to the end user, to your client, and now the client is going to run that software and see if it is working fine. If it is working fine, then we go live. This is the phase where we are going live, which means what? This software is ready to be used now by the customer. So the acceptance testing is basically a phase where the customer gets a feel of whether the software is working properly or not. He's going to check different features, is going to give his feedback to the customer. If the feedback is okay, then the programmer says, okay, fine, now you can start inputting actual data, you can start using this software so that for your use, right? So let's now take a look at how we are going to draw the Pert chart for based on this table. As we can see here that he has mentioned the activities, right, but he has not given us milestones, right? So we are going to have to write down the milestone values ourselves. For example, when activity A ends, that would be for example milestone number 2, right? When activity B ends, that would be milestone number 3, so on and so forth. Okay, let's get started we can see here on the Pert chart that this is activity A, which is related to interviewing the end user, and it takes 1 week. At the end, milestone number 2 has been reached. This is activity B, right, where we are doing analysis, and this is going to take 2 weeks. Once activity B is over, we have reached the third milestone. Once activity B is over, now we have to take care of activity C and D, which are related to design, right? And these two can take place in parallel. Activity C takes 3 weeks to complete, and activity D takes 1 week to complete, right? So what we can do here is we can say that this is activity C, it is going to take 3 weeks. This is activity D, it is going to take 1 week. And at the end of activity C and D, we have reached milestone number 5. Once the design phase has been complete, now comes the program development phase or the coding phase, right? And this is going to take how many weeks? This is going to take 12 weeks. So activity E is the next activity, and it is going to take 12 weeks, and at the end of activity E will be at milestone number 6. Okay, once we've developed code in activity E, what we can do now is we can do some testing, right? And the testing that we're going to be doing is black box testing, and that is activity F, which is going to take 2 weeks. So after program coding, the next activity is activity F, which is going to take 2 weeks. And after activity F, we can see that there is an overlap here, right? So we have some parallel activities taking place here, right? And we can see that activity G and H, which are related to producing technical documentation and acceptance testing by the client, can be done in parallel, right? And activity G takes 4 weeks, whereas activity H takes 1 week. So we can say that activity G takes 4 weeks and activity H takes 1 week, right? And this dotted part is basically indicating what? That this is a dummy activity, right? And this dotted part is also telling us that this is a dummy activity. And now that we are done with activity G and activity H, the final activity is activity I, which is 1 week long, where we are going to do the final installation, and people at our employees office can start using this software. Okay, few other questions that we should quickly consider. For example, what is going to be the critical path or the longest continuous path for this project? Okay, and we are going to start here, right? And this, then this, right? So this is going to be 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then we are going through these 12 weeks, then we are going through these 2 weeks, then we are going through these 4 weeks, and then we are going through this 1 week, right? So this is going to be what? 1 plus 2 3 plus 3 6 plus 12 18 20 24 and 1 25. So basically activity A, B, C, E, F, G and I make up our critical path, right? So these are the activities that are going to make up our critical path, and this project is going to complete in 25 weeks, right? That's what we have found out from the critical path. Okay, one possible question is how much slack or float time do we have for activity D? Meaning how much spare time, how many free weeks can we have for activity D? And basically what we have is 2, right? So 2 weeks is basically the slack time or the float time. Another possible question can be, what is the earliest start time for activity D? Basically activity D can be started as soon as activity B has ended, right here. So which is what? 3 weeks, right? After 3 weeks, so the earliest start time for activity D can be the third week, right? Or you can say at the end of the third week, right? At the end of third week we can start activity D. And what would be the earliest finish time? What would be the earliest finish time for activity DB? Activity D can finish at the end of the fourth week, right? Because when it starts early at the end of, so this is going to take 1 week, right? And this is going to take 2 weeks, right? At the end of 3 weeks you can start activity D, which can take what, 1 week, so that would be the fourth week, right? So the earliest finish time can be the fourth week. Similarly, we can also give if we can also be asked, what would be the latest start time for activity D? What would be the latest start time? Meaning, how late can we possibly go till we can start activity D? So what you can see here is that this takes 1 week, this takes 2 weeks, that is 3 weeks, and this takes 3 weeks, which is a total of 6 weeks. Which means what? We would have accomplished milestone 5 at the end of 6 weeks, right? And this is the point. At this point, after 6 weeks, we want activity D to also have finished by then, which means the last date or the latest time for activity D to finish is what? 6 weeks. At the end of 6 weeks, activity D should be complete, right? And which means what can be the latest start time? Oh, sorry, this was the latest finish time, right? So when we said at the end of 6 weeks, 6th week, right? At the end of 6th week, by the end of 6th week, activity D should have finished. So this is the latest finish time, which means what would be the latest start time for activity D? So this cannot be the latest start time. Sorry, I was wrong about this. If activity D has to end by the end of the 6th week, it takes 1 week, right? So going backwards, right, this is called the backward pass. Going backwards, we can see that activity D should start at the start of 5th week. Right, it should start at the start of 5th week, and then it can finish latest at the end of the 6th week. So the latest start would be the start of the 5th week, and the latest end would be the end of the 6th week. And we can do the same for activity G also. And one final question, what do these dotted arrows indicate? These are basically indicating dummy activities. Okay, I don't know what's wrong with my writing here, but it's supposed to be DUMMY, dummy activities. Okay,